Most who ascend to power never touch it. They sit on thrones built by other men's hands, bound by the promises they never made, entrapped by the expectations of the masses and the threats of their inner circles. They are crowned but not sovereign, applauded but not feared, adored but only for as long as they obey. These are not rulers, these are prisoners mistaken for kings. Power, real power, does not reside in titles or ceremonies. It lives in the margins, in the silence between commands, in the secrets kept and debts collected, in the private fears of those who call themselves public servants. The true ruler is rarely the one seen on stage. He is the one who writes the script, controls the lighting, and knows which mask will break under heat. Most leaders are puppets, elegant, decorated, articulate marionettes, pulled by unseen strings. The electorate believes it chooses, the party believes it governs, the media believes it reveals. But the real strategist never seeks visibility. He plants ideas, manufactures necessity, reshapes loyalties not through debate, but through fear and favor, in equal measure. His power lies not in being liked or followed, but in being needed or feared when no longer needed. How did we come to this? Because most men do not want power. They want applause, safety, relevance. Power in its naked form is terrifying. It requires solitude, cold decisions, and the willingness to be hated for the survival of the state. So they become symbols instead, soft enough to be celebrated, shallow enough to be replaced. A puppet is not weak. It can move, it can gesture, it can even inspire tears, but it cannot decide, it cannot refuse, it cannot betray the hand that lifts it. And in politics, the inability to betray is not a virtue, it is a cage. To break free, one must first understand the architecture of dependence. Every visible leader is surrounded by a fortress of obligations. Donors, handlers, image consultants, party machinery, promises whispered in private rooms. Break one thread, and the whole tapestry quivers. So they smile, they nod, they obey. They sign what they do not read. They shake hands with enemies painted as allies, and they call it strategy. But real strategy begins where obedience ends. The first move toward sovereignty is to renounce the need to be adored. Popularity is the tax paid by puppets to remain relevant. Fear, by contrast, is the currency of permanence. It disciplines loyalty. It outlasts applause. The sovereign ruler, whether in a palace or behind a curtain, commands not because people love him, but because they know the cost of his absence. Understand this. You do not need to be seen to rule. Visibility is a vulnerability. The sun shines brightly, but it is the invisible gravity that holds planets in place. The moment you become too visible, too dependent on approval, too addicted to narrative, you become governable. You become the story someone else wrote. Most leaders live in constant fear of headlines. They watch polls as if watching the weather, believing that rain ends rain. But the true strategist creates the climate. He does not wait for consensus, he manufactures it. He does not chase legitimacy, he buries his enemies in it. If you would be free, learn to hold contradiction without apology. The world is not moved by purity, but by precision. Morality is useful only when weaponized, compassion when timed, honesty when lethal. The sovereign does not play the moral game. He sets the rules by which morality is judged. A puppet cannot afford to offend. It must be palatable to all and respected by none. But a ruler must offend with intention. Every enemy sharpened is a message to the undecided. Every betrayal endured is a reminder that loyalty is currency, not sentiment. To rule is to disappoint the many for the survival of the few. It is to say no more often than yes. It is to see men not as ideals, but as variables in a larger equation, expendable, improvable, predictable. You must not fear solitude. Solitude is the forge where strategy is born. Crowds cloud judgment, applause dulls instinct, but silence clarifies. And in silence, the true leader studies the weaknesses of those who pretend to lead. So ask yourself, are you governing or being governed? Do your decisions ripple with consequence, or do they echo the agendas of others? Have you mastered the theater, or are you merely a performer waiting for your next line? Most leaders are born in compromise and die in obedience, but those who break free are remembered not because they ruled, but because they refused to be ruled. Power does not ask permission, it does not explain, it does not apologize, and it does not belong to those who wait for it. It must be seized, shaped, and secured with the cold patience of war. And if you do not possess the will to betray the world's illusions, you will serve them. You will become the puppet, and someone else quieter, colder, less visible will pull your strings. Most who speak of freedom have never held it. They confuse the absence of chains with the presence of command. But to command is not simply to issue orders. It is to shape the arena in which others must act, to write the questions before answers are given, to make others believe they chose when in fact they merely reacted. And that, above all, is what separates the ruler from the ruled, not force but foresight, not charisma but control. The world is not governed by ideals. It is governed by instincts, weaknesses, hungers, and those who understand them. Most political systems are not built to reward strength, but to camouflage it. They disguise domination as consensus, coercion as diplomacy, surveillance as safety, and the majority accept this willingly, even gratefully, because truth is heavier than they wish to carry. They prefer the theater of representation to the labor of responsibility, and so the puppet rises, with polished words and vacant eyes, a vessel for the wills of those who stay unseen. But the sovereign sees through this. He knows that the structure of power matters more than its slogans. He studies who controls the flow of information, who owns silence, who benefits when nothing is said. He understands that chaos is not the enemy of order, it is its precondition. For only when the people fear collapse do they accept control. Only when the enemy is named do they seek a protector, and only when the illusion breaks do they finally see the strings. Thus, the ruler must be willing to create the conditions he later claims to solve. Not always, not blatantly, but precisely enough to remind the governed that their peace is purchased. That stability has a price, and he alone can pay it. This is not cruelty, it is calculation. A ruler who cannot wield fear has no hands, and a leader who cannot impose necessity will be discarded when times grow hard. The people do not remember kindness in crisis, they remember control. You cannot lead those you depend on. Dependency is the leash that adorns even the most decorated leader. A ruler must own his exits. He must never need what he cannot command. And he must be prepared to sacrifice sentiment for survival, for power is not retained through affection, but through consequence. One betrayal, if decisive, teaches more loyalty than 100 favors. The sovereign does not announce himself. He does not boast, posture, or plead. He moves through institutions like a knife, through silk invisible until the cut is felt. He does not chase attention. He allows it to arrive, and when it does, he already controls the narrative. The masses see a hero or a villain. The ruler sees utility. He uses perception as armor, reputation as currency, and legacy as leverage. For history belongs to those who remain standing, not to those who beg to be understood. Most leaders fear contradiction because they believe it reveals weakness, but the strategist embraces it because contradiction is the natural terrain of power. To promise peace while preparing for war, to speak of unity while sowing division, to offer hope while quietly tightening the reins. This is not hypocrisy. It is geometry, the precise arrangement of angles to produce the desired shape, and only the naive expect the shape of power to be pure. There is no virtue in transparency if it makes you vulnerable. There is no honor in principle if it makes you predictable. And there is no loyalty worth keeping if it cannot survive the storm. The ruler does not ask for fidelity, he engineers it, through fear, through reward, through surveillance, through myth. Whatever mechanism ensures obedience becomes the architecture of state, whether it is law or legend, loyalty or leverage. What matters is not its name, but its function. Those who dream of being loved in politics dream of death. The crowd is not constant. It is a tide, it rises for spectacle and recedes for blood. One moment they chant your name, the next they chant for your head. If you build your strength on their adoration, you will drown when it turns. But if you build it on necessity, if you make yourself the keystone in the structure they depend on, then even hatred becomes irrelevant. They may resent you, but they will not remove you. This is the great secret. Survival is the only test of legitimacy. Not the ballot, not the opinion poll, not the moral judgment of historians, but survival through upheaval, through crisis, through betrayal. Every leader will face revolt. Every system will fracture. Every alliance will sour. But only those who are prepared to discard sentiment and embrace necessity will endure. Do not confuse endurance with stagnation. To endure, you must evolve. The sovereign sheds, skins, names, strategies. He knows when to disappear, when to reinvent, when to let enemies believe they've won until they're too exposed to recover. He does not cling to outdated alliances or brittle reputations. He watches, he waits, he strikes when the cost is lowest and the return is irreversible. He does not bleed for symbolism. He bleeds only to feed the machinery of permanence. It is better to be feared than forgotten. It is better to be doubted than dismissed. It is better to be alone and sovereign than surrounded and enslaved. For company means nothing if it requires your silence, and applause means nothing if it costs your autonomy. The ruler does not seek friendship. He seeks leverage. Even affection must serve a function. If it cannot be weaponized, it is a luxury, and luxuries are liabilities in the game of power. The world will not be saved. It will be ruled. The only question is by whom, and through what means. Those who deny this are already ruled. Those who resist it blindly become its instruments. But those who understand it, who see the world not as it should be, but as it is, they alone possess the clarity to act, not with purity, not with noise, but with cold precision. To break free from the puppet strings, one must first recognize them, and then, one by one, sever them not with rage, but with discipline, not in public rebellion, but in private resolve. Every compromise reversed, every dependency dismantled, every weakness known and fortified, until finally, nothing remains but the will sharpened, tested, sovereign. Then you will no longer perform power. You will possess it. Then you will no longer be chosen. You will choose. Then you will no longer seek freedom. You will enforce it. And when they look at you, uncertain whether to kneel or strike, you will know you have arrived. Not as a leader propped by illusion, but as a ruler who built the architecture of control. Continue walking. Continue watching. The reckoning does not end. There is no throne without exile. Every true ruler has been cast out, betrayed, humiliated, not in body alone, but in spirit, in relevance, in memory. Exile is the crucible where illusions are burned away. It is where you learn that loyalty is not a bond, but a transaction. That virtue invites ruin when not defended by strength. That even silence speaks, and often louder than truth. In exile, you see the machinery from the outside. You see who needs enemies, who fears peace, who thrives on chaos. And if you watch closely enough, you learn how to return not as a petitioner, but as an architect. The puppet never survives exile. He needs the stage, the script, the validation of the audience. Strip that away, and he dissolves into irrelevance. But the sovereign uses exile as reconnaissance. He walks the margins not to retreat, but to recalibrate. He listens to the lies told in his absence. He tracks the weaknesses that power hides. And when he returns, it is not to reclaim what was lost, but to reconfigure what was broken. For power is not restored, it is redesigned. Do not trust those who speak only of unity. Unity is not the natural state of men. It is an outcome imposed by force or fear or fate. Division is the default. Rivalry is the pulse of the political body. And the ruler who understands this does not seek to eliminate conflict, he manages it. He becomes the axis around which enemies revolve, the arbiter of chaos, the architect of managed instability. For when all factions rely on you to restrain each other, you become indispensable. And in politics, indispensability is immunity. Men want to believe that loyalty can be earned through kindness. But in the machinery of power, loyalty is not given freely. It is rented, paid for in opportunity, in immunity, in shared survival. And it is withdrawn the moment the cost exceeds the benefit. A ruler does not mourn this. He prepares for it. He designs systems where betrayal is calculated, where defectors are replaced before they act, where contingency is not a plan but a posture, and when the betrayal comes, as it always does, it becomes a signal, not a shock. Trust is a dangerous currency. It dulls vigilance. It breeds assumption. It invites exposure. The wise ruler does not place trust, he builds surveillance. He does not rely on promises, he secures leverage. Every ally is a potential opponent. Every smile may hide a scalpel. But this is not paranoia. It is equilibrium. The state is not sustained by harmony. It is sustained by threat, by counterweight, by the silent pressure of consequence. And the sovereign who forgets this will find himself surrounded by courtiers until the blade is drawn. Fear is not tyranny. It is structure. It is clarity. It is the memory that actions have costs, that loyalty is not free, that ambition has boundaries. And the ruler who can wield fear without cruelty commands not through terror, but through inevitability. His presence is a signal that chaos is held back by his hand, and that his fall would unleash something far worse. This is how true rule endures, not through illusion, not through sentiment, but through consequence held in reserve. Never confuse noise with threat. The crowd that shouts the loudest is rarely the one that matters. True threats are silent, patient, strategic. They move in shadows, not streets. They do not protest, they plan. And if you are watching spectacle, you are not watching power. The sovereign ruler does not waste energy on theater. He studies the back doors, the funders, the message shapers, the legal instruments that can paralyze a movement or erase a name. He operates where history is drafted, not where it is debated. You cannot change the nature of man, but you can weaponize it. You can channel pride into loyalty, greed into productivity, fear into discipline. The sovereign does not attempt to purify the human soul, he engineers systems that account for its defects. He does not ask men to rise above themselves. He builds levers that pull them downward, toward predictable action, and uses that predictability to rule. This is not cynicism, it is realism, sharpened to the edge of utility. The ruler must be multilingual, not in tongue, but in mask. He must speak to soldiers in certainty, to citizens in reassurance, to rivals in ambiguity, to conspirators in implication. He must never reveal his full intention, only fragments scattered like bait, misleading, interpreted differently by each faction. For once a ruler is fully understood, he is fully targeted. But when he is uncertain, he becomes a question others cannot answer, and uncertainty is its own shield. The deeper you move into the heart of power, the more you must shed what made you likable. Popularity is the first indulgence to fall. Transparency is the second. Ideology is the third. What remains is control, and its only ally, necessity. Do not seek to be understood, seek to be essential. Do not seek to be admired, seek to be inevitable. When your presence becomes the difference between order and collapse, no one will care how you arrived. They will care only that you remain. You must not flinch from cruelty, but you must never indulge it. Precision, not brutality. Timing, not volume. Let one act of controlled ruthlessness echo louder than 100 speeches. Let it become myth. The sovereign does not rule through endless punishment. He rules through the memory of what happens when he is crossed. And he ensures that memory remains alive, discreetly, irrevocably, efficiently. Do not believe in redemption. Men do not change. They adapt. If you spare them, it must be to use them. If you forgive, it must be to bind them. There is no clean break in politics, only new arrangements of the same decay. The sovereign accepts this, and he learns to swim in it, not drown under it. He does not search for perfect men, only useful ones. He does not wait for virtue, only opportunity. And he does not seek justice, only survival dressed in the language of order. The machinery of power does not reward purity. It chews it, spits it, buries it under the weight of necessity, but it does reward clarity. It rewards the ruler who understands that appearances must be managed, alliances must be temporary, and every promise has a half-life. The sovereign does not promise forever, he promises outcomes. He delivers, not through perfection, but through dominance. And dominance, when artfully sustained, is indistinguishable from stability. If you wish to break free, to rule rather than be ruled, you must begin with self-erasure, not as annihilation, but as reinvention. Strip away the desire to be liked, the instinct to explain, the reflex to trust. Replace them with the discipline to observe, the will to wait, the courage to act alone. Build yourself not as a person, but as a position, a function in the machinery that cannot be removed without collapse. That is the path. That is the threshold most will never cross, for they do not want to be sovereign. They want to be safe. They want to speak of truth, but only if it brings applause. They want to act, but only if it is endorsed. And so they remain puppets, decorated, praised, elevated briefly before they are replaced, because they mistook the costume for the role, because they believed power could be granted. But power is never granted. It is taken, it is forged in isolation, and it is kept by those who never needed permission. To command others, you must first command yourself, not in the moral sense, but in the political. Your impulses must become instruments. Your fears must be mapped and tamed. Your ambition must be weaponized with patience. The ruler who cannot rule his own instincts becomes a liability to his own strategy. Anger must be postponed until it is useful. Desire must be denied until it serves a structural purpose. Even mercy must be withheld until it can purchase something greater than virtue. To lead is to become your own engineer, reshaping every internal movement into a calculated expression of external control. Most men carry their principles like banners, waving them in the hope that others will follow. But banners make you visible, and visibility, in the realm of power, is a wound. The sovereign carries no banner. He carries outcomes. His principles are embedded in the architecture of his decisions, not spoken, but enforced, not proclaimed, but imposed. He understands that ideals are useful only when they generate order, and order is useful only when it secures the continuity of rule. You will be told to serve. You will be told that leadership is stewardship, that power must bow to law, that legitimacy flows from consent, and yet behind every constitution is a conquest. Behind every law, a decision to kill. Behind every institution, a man or a faction that chose force before words. This is the architecture no one will teach you, but all rulers eventually learn that peace is a mask, and masks are crafted by those with the steel to silence disorder. To break free from the lie of moral governance, you must first accept that every system was built by those who outlasted their enemies, not those who converted them. Beneath every alliance lies calculation. Beneath every handshake, a hierarchy. The sovereign does not mistake smiles for solidarity. He hears the unspoken question, "What will this cost me later?" and he prepares the answer before it is asked. Every alliance is a wager, every loyalty a debt. The ruler does not seek permanent allies, he seeks rotating dependencies. He ensures that every player needs him more than he needs them, and when that balance tips, he renegotiates or removes. To rule is to lie not because deception is glamorous, but because truth without strategy is suicide. The lie is not always verbal. It is structural. It is the meeting scheduled to mislead, the appointment made to distract, the approval given to delay revolt. The sovereign lies the way an architect adjusts weight, not arbitrarily, but with precision. The goal is not to betray, but to survive the betrayals of others, to mislead long enough to act fast enough to control the outcome, and to control quietly enough that no one notices the outcome was ever in question. You cannot ask men to rise above themselves, but you can trap their vices in service to your design. Pride becomes loyalty when flattered. Greed becomes obedience when fed in rations. Fear becomes devotion when directed outward. The ruler does not erase vice, he reorganizes it. He builds channels where private vice flows into public order, and when a man believes his sin is safe, he becomes predictable. And predictability, once mapped, becomes the ruler's tool of discipline. The sovereign must always remember the cost of appearing weak. Weakness is not measured in emotion, but in the loss of initiative. The moment you can be cornered, questioned, or delayed without consequence, you are no longer sovereign, you are being tolerated. And tolerance is the prelude to replacement. The wise ruler does not wait for the world to test his limits. He asserts them before the question is asked. Through gesture, through absence, through the orchestrated collapse of someone else who overreached. He shows what happens, then withdraws, letting silence do what speeches never could. Reputation is a blade. Sharpen it carefully, keep it concealed, and draw it only when the memory will outlast the blood. The ruler's name must become a signal that the game has changed, that rules are suspended, that time is being rewritten. You do not need to be loved. You do not even need to be obeyed in every moment, but you must be remembered as the axis of consequence. The one figure whose disfavor reshapes careers, whose absence unravels coalitions, whose silence creates more fear than others' threats. You will be hated, not because you are cruel, but because survival, when done correctly, always offends someone's fantasy of fairness. And fantasies, when shattered, always look for someone to blame. The sovereign must never fear this hatred. He must build against it, prepare for it, even use it. Let the hatred of the few become the fear of the many. Let their rage make your power visible. Let their noise remind others of what silence costs. Control is not about endless action. It is about timing. Knowing when to hold the line, when to concede something meaningless, when to retreat to draw the enemy out, when to strike so hard that the need for a second strike disappears. Power that acts too often becomes noise. Power that never acts becomes myth. But power that waits, calculates, then moves with cold finality becomes law. Do not be seduced by the language of change. Most who speak of it have no map, only emotion. Most who chant it want not transformation, but reversal, a return to some imagined justice. The ruler must understand that change without direction is chaos, and chaos only serves those who are already positioned to seize what falls. If you are not ready to act the moment disorder begins, you are not a ruler. You are debris. The sovereign must own the pace of events. He must speed them up when hesitation favors his enemies. He must slow them down when too many hands are in play. He must freeze moments in place when advantage is fragile, and then move with violence when the window opens. This is not impulsiveness, it is orchestration. Most leaders are conducted. They react to the tempo set by others. But the true sovereign conducts and makes others dance, stumble, or kneel on his terms. Every appearance must serve a function. Every silence must carry weight. Every retreat must plant a trap. The ruler has no wasted gestures. He has no accidents. He allows others to speak first, reveal themselves, betray their need to be seen, and then he reshapes the board while they are still performing. This is how the invisible become invincible. By never needing the spotlight, only the strings behind the curtain. You must never believe you are safe. Safety is the final illusion. The moment you stop watching, someone else begins. The moment you believe you've won, the seed of your undoing is planted. The sovereign does not rest. He rotates trust, replaces alliances, audits loyalty. He rewards, but with expiration. He promotes, but with surveillance. He permits comfort, but only in doses that do not dull vigilance. Power must move. If it stagnates, it decays. If it grows complacent, it collapses. The ruler must always be building, testing, evolving. He must shed the skin of yesterday's strategy before it rots. He must speak new languages, master new weapons, confront new enemies, not out of ambition, but because permanence demands reinvention. And only those who evolve faster than their rivals remain sovereign. And so, in the final analysis, there is no peace for the one who truly rules, no applause that does not echo with warning, no alliance that does not contain the seed of defection, no moment of stillness that is not the prelude to a new assault. The sovereign walks alone not out of pride, but out of necessity. For to lead without illusion is to carry the weight no one else dares touch, the weight of consequence, of betrayal, of the decisions that shape the lives of others without ever asking for their approval. You will be misjudged, you will be reviled by those who cannot comprehend the costs of order, who mistake restraint for weakness and necessity for cruelty. Let them speak. Let them write their histories, weep their shallow tears, demand a world that never was. You are not there to echo their fantasies. You are there to preserve the frame, to ensure the world does not fracture under the weight of its own delusions. They will not thank you, but they will survive you. Because in the end, power is not about the throne. It is not about the seal or the banner or the anthem. Power is the quiet ability to shape decisions without speaking, to bend the arc of events with the precision of thought and the cold patience of inevitability. It is not given, it is not shared, it is seized, maintained, wielded, and when necessary abandoned without sentiment, so it may be taken again elsewhere, in another form, under another name. Break the strings, bury the mask, refuse the stage. Rule not as a symbol, but as the shadow behind the curtain. And when the world calls you ruthless, silent, dangerous, smile. You have finally become real.